Please go ahead.
Got it. Okay. And also the report is what I sent to you earlier this week, which is that Kelly was about to go home, and that was last Friday. So hopefully he's home and recovering. So I actually sent an email to Anna today to ask her for an update on Kelly's development, but I haven't heard from her yet. But as soon as I do, I will share with everybody. But again, thank you for your concern. We're all looking forward to having him back.
Cool. So Ruffers, why don't we begin the meeting tonight? How are you feeling and what are your expectations?
That's me. Okay. Thank you, Steve. Actually, I feel great. Happy to be here. And what I expect is to keep exploring, topology, how it differs from topography, which we are most used to. And again, I find fascinating all this exploration around 360 degrees, 720, and then 1,440. So, and actually, the other day I was talking to people about, when people talk about 360 degrees vision, and when I explained to them that there's another side, which is 720, I said, well, don't use that for your business. It's not enough to have a 360 degree, because that's flat. When you make it 320, then you get the other side of the equation, and then you have to go to 1,140. But again, that's perhaps a bit too much for most people, because we can easily demonstrate the way Steve demonstrated, I think, last session, and the way he will probably go over that again today, how critical that is in terms of building this multidimensional thought. So I look very much forward to the call. So that's how I feel, and that's what I expect. So Joe, since we're in the same time zone, how do you feel? What do you expect?
I have to feel good because everybody's here and that it's only 10 o'clock. So it's great to be here with everyone. I'm just looking to build on last week. That proof actually opened up my eyes a little bit. We talked. I was able to have an opportunity to talk to Steve during the week a little more about it. And really understand the dualities that now exist, and to see it mathematically laid out, it's starting to make a lot more sense to me. So, and I will ask Peter, how are you? Welcome back. What would you like to get out of today?
Look, I'm good. It's good to see everyone. We've had a very busy couple of weeks lately for one thing and another. And I'm actually, I've had a little win this week. We're taking over another business in our industry officially tomorrow. So that's a good thing. And that will well and truly keep me busy for a little while. Catalina, how do you feel and what are you looking forward to today?
Thank you, Pete. Well, it's always good to see faces that you feel close to, even though you're far from, and you've never actually had the chance of giving a hug. But it's good to see you and connect you anyway. So look forward to today's meeting and see what we learn about it. And how do you feel when what do you want to get out of today?
Yeah, thank you, Catalina. Right, I like Raffers. I'm happy to be here. And the past 2 weeks, the information has been crazy, right? And I was thinking about it because one of the things we were trying to do is to get a more accurate assessment of children, of human beings, actually, And we came up with a 4D assessment idea. Problem is we don't quite know how to put it onto to make it digitize it, yeah, because we're looking at one dimension here, which is the academic part, which is pure knowledge, and then you have the skills, to apply the knowledge. But then there's a second dimension, the third dimension is wrapping everything around with human skills, right? But that still isn't enough. And we realize there's a fourth dimension to what we do, right? And that means the skills, academic skills, and the skills to apply, and then the human skills, everything that we do, they're like literally like this whole sphere, they're all connected, you know? So you're talking about the axis, but at the end of the day, everything is connected. Like even from the knowledge skills to applied skills to maybe a human skill here, you know, and it crosses over, like there is no, literally it's infinite, right? The way the whole thing works. So we know what we want, but we're not quite sure how to put it online, yeah, as in to do the whole digital thing. But anyway, as we move forward, maybe we can have a suggestion as to how we can do that. We've even pulled out all the skills and, you know, looked at the Gartner's 7 intelligences, and we know it's not complete, and we came up with a more complete list. Anyway, that's where we're at. I'm looking forward to what else we can get out of today, right? And that will be Manu. How do you feel, and what do you expect to get out today?
Feel good. I feel emergent. Welcome to Peter and Catalina. Really, where we were last week and the weeks before was to try to kind of fix the fundamentals, you know, to understand the generalized laws and to try to apply. And I always insist, apply locally. And for that, I will read to you some stuff from, I think, Jordan Peterson. Thank you, Steve. It is, you need to place one foot in what you have mastered and understood, and the other in what you are currently exploring and mastering. Yeah. Then you have positioned yourself where the terror of existence is under control and you are secure, but where you are also alert and engaged. That is where there is something new to master and some way that you can be improved. That is where meaning is to be found. So again, this summarizes the fact that we have to understand generalized laws, but most importantly, apply them to life, to improving, to progressing, to exploring veritas. And that's what I expect that we achieve. I think Kelly will be quite happy with that. And that's what I expect. John, how do you feel? What do you expect?
Feeling good, if a little warm, glad to be here. And picking up on what you just said, Manu, what I want to do is learn and apply, not just learn, but learn and use that to improve what I do, what I contribute. So am I the last?
Steve.
Steve, you're the last?
Yeah.
So Steve, how are you feeling and what do you want to take out of today?
Well, I'm with you, John. This idea of learning and actually applying is really a powerful thing. And as I'm listening to Anne share, wow, she's really figured out ways to apply these general principles, the fundamentals that Manu just talked about, that Kelly's been, you know, grinding in over a period of time. And she brought up this 4-dimensionality. Well, you know what? If you take 360 degrees and add it to 360 degrees and add 2 of those together, you have 4 360 degrees, 4 dimensions of 360 degrees. So that is the tetrahedron. And you're doing a great job, Anne. Woo! That blew me away, because as I listened to you and you talked about 4 dimensions, I really got this 4-ness in one of our formulas that we talked about last week. So that's exciting. The fact I did talk with Joe this week, but I also had 2 communications from Manu about this thing, because I feel so close to getting this. And I want to come back, and even though I'm a little bit pedantic, a little bit slow, I think that you guys are getting enough that we can review it. And I think you will surprise yourselves. I have surprised myself as I've gone back to look at what we've been reading. And I'll bet that you guys do a great job on this. What I'd like to do tonight is start with 224.02. Yeah, let me show you the actual communication here from Synergetics. As we start with this idea, angular topology, we go through 2401 and then hit the 22401, and then we hit 22402 before moving on. I think if we start with 22402, I think everybody on this call can actually explain what Bucky is saying right there. So I'm ready to go. John, you haven't, you usually have been reading. Joe took over for you when you were gone, but if you'd like to go ahead and read that.
Sure. So all local structural systems in universe are always accomplished by nature through the elimination of 720 degrees of angle. This is the way in which nature takes two complete 360-degree angular tucks in the illusory infinity of a plane to render systems locally and visibly finite. The difference between usually finite systems and illusory infinity is two cyclical unities.
Perfect. Okay, everybody. Who's going to explain that? And where do you want to start? I know you can do this. So we've gone over this for 2 weeks, but I think we got it now.
I think two things. I don't want to explain, but I just want to fix two things. Focus on systems locally and visibly finite.
Beautiful.
That's the first thing. And then the second is two cyclic unities.
Yep. So continue.
Well, I just wanted to highlight that.
Good. I love that.
Because and then also at the beginning of it, all local structural systems. So all local structural systems
Cool. Comments, question. Let's keep going. Explain this paragraph. Golly. I just thought everybody, to me, of course, I've been looking at this every freaking day. So let's take a look at this. How can we explain a 720-degree angle? What's the significance of 720 degrees?
Awareness.
Yeah, awareness. That's the perfect application of the principle. But awareness of what? And you talked about this when you opened up tonight. Raffers, you talked about it when you opened up tonight. Joe, you talked about it when you opened up tonight. Okay, so I can go into some stuff, but I thought you guys would explain it to me. And listen, I'm riding this thing like I remember when I was a kid, I went out to the Apache reservation in Arizona, and I saw my uncle out there who worked for the Indian Affairs Bureau there. And we were driving down the road, and there was a donkey in the middle of the road. And my uncle, the donkey would not move, and the road was too rough to get around. My uncle got out of the car and took a baseball bat and beat that donkey until it got he told it to get off the road, and when it wouldn't get off the road, he just beat that donkey till it got off the road. I want to beat this donkey so we get it. All
Okay.
right.
Put the bat away.
Let's just go to one exercise quickly. In the beginning, there was day and night. How many days and nights did it take the first conscious being to realize that there were day and night?
One complete cycle.
John, if a being, if you and I woke up and only saw one complete cycle, we would see the sun come up, we'd see the sun go down, and we'd have no proof the sun would come up again.
Yes.
Right.
As far as we were concerned, we knew there was a day, we knew there was a night, and now it'd be oblivion. So how many cycles do we need to observe in order to see how the system works? What's the minimum number of cycles we need to observe to see how the minimum works?
I would say 4 cycles.
Say 2.
Okay, 2.
2.
That means you count day as one cycle and night as another cycle.
Okay, there we go.
So 360 and 360.
Right on.
2 cyclic unities.
Yes.
2 cyclic.
Those cyclic units.
Cyclic unity. Cyclic or cyclic.
Day and night is 1 unit. Yes.
So one cycle is daytime, nighttime. The other cycle is daytime, nighttime.
Nighttime,
We have 2 cyclic unities.
Yeah.
And one could argue that when I stood there on the planet during the day, I could look around for 360 degrees and see daytime. And then when nighttime came, I could look around for 360 degrees and see nighttime.
Mhm.
How many 360-degree cycles did I just see?
2.
2 360-degree cycles. Yet how many unities did I experience?
1.
1.
1.
Daytime, nighttime,
Nighttime.
1 unity.
Yes.
In order to experience the system, I have to have a minimum of 2. 2 cycles, 2 complete cyclic unities.
There'll be 2 cycles of 360 degrees each.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. 720.
And that is
One
intrinsic
duality.
to learning from being inside.
And how many
Right.
times do you create a business? You take a look at how the business works and you're only looking at 1 cycle. You're not looking at 2 cycles. You do your research, you figure it all out. Okay, I make this project and I put it out there. But what about the other cycle where it comes back? Right? How many times have you seen people create a business where they define their product, they think it's the greatest in the world, and they've never talked to their customers to see what their customers are experiencing?
Yeah.
They got to get that second cycle. Okay, good. So now we're getting there. All local structural systems in the universe are always accomplished through nature by elimination of the 720 degrees of angle. Okay, now reverse engineer what we just said about 2 days and 2 nights and tell me about elimination of 720 degrees. How do I create my reality? How do I observe visible reality?
Aha. Do you understand that?
Who, you're asking me?
No, yes. I said that is a aha moment. The aha.
This is an aha moment. I have to eliminate 720 degrees of cyclic unities in order to observe 1 system.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? The elimination of 720 degrees. He says it another way here too. Nature takes 2 complete 360-degree angular tucks in illusionary infinity. Angular tucks of 2 360-degree cycles, or 360-degree angular tucks of illusionary infinity of a plane in order to render what?
Systems locally and visibly finite.
There we go. And so this comes back to what Anne said at the beginning. And Anne, if I can pick on your words, there is not an infinite number of possibilities. Bucky says there's no infinite possibilities. Everything is finite. It's just not visible. It's there.
Let's put it differently. Why do you, I wouldn't say well, why do you explore? Why do you learn? Because there's uncertainty or chaos. There's always that duality of the structure and chaos. Now, you are looking into, you are exploring for other structures. So you divide until you converge into something. Once you convert it, you converge into it, you have found something that you can store, to refer to, that can repeat, that can do this and that. You can store it. That is in the DNA of our quest for Veritas.
If
We
I
want
just,
to emulate nature.
That's exactly what the quote that you opened with, essentially. You know,
how's that? Which quote, Joe?
The Peterson quote, where essentially you were saying, you know, 1 foot in order and 1 foot in chaos was a way of saying it.
Right on.
So essentially that's what you're trying, that's what exploration is.
Right on.
Because if you explore, I mean, if the foot is too weird, the other foot, you can lose what you call your research acumen,
Right.
your ability to actually realize. Otherwise, you just,
You lose awareness.
Yes.
Comments, questions? Has a light gone on?
Yeah, actually, I understood that.
Cool.
I understood it. I still
And-
need to
and
be able
Anne-
to explain it.
And you introduced it with the 4 dimensions. If I say there's 1 dimension equals 360 degrees, that's the perfect metaphor for a dimension, 360 degrees. Right? Beautiful. But I can't just watch 1 cycle. I get to watch 2 of those. In fact, the more I watch and continue to observe, the more I see the spiral nature of the systems, and I can become sensitive to the regenerative aspects of the system. Rather than seeing 1 cycle and saying, this is the way it is, and building my business based on that cycle. I think this is the reason why Peter and Kat they're acquiring another business on Monday. They've got 1 cycle in their current business, but here's another one down here and incorporating it. So they're taking 1 system, combining it with another system, and they're taking a look at reality. Comments, questions?
Steve, when you were talking about taking 2 cycles to observe the stars and the day and the night, I couldn't help but think of, well, not just the Bible, but every ancient text around is a multi-layered event. It has an esoteric knowledge and an exoteric knowledge. It has a knowledge for those who are on the inside and a knowledge for the common man. And in the ancient texts of the Bible, for example, when they say the shepherds used to watch their flocks at night, that was actually a metaphysical way of saying watching the stars. And the shepherds were watching and figuring out the cycles of the earth through watching the stars, and were figuring out, in the case of the pyramids, exactly where that was on the ley lines because of where it was in connection to the stars. And that's, my hobby is all that sort of stuff, or one of them.
Mhm.
But I don't necessarily 100% get everything that was there because we've missed a couple of weeks. But what I also get very clearly, what you were saying about Anne and before, or what Anne was saying before, is our world is actually bringing what we see in the fourth dimension into third dimension reality. And it's actually having faith to our fourth dimension visions, whatever they happen to be, whether that's a business or whether that's a better health or a better family or a better world. So that's where my mind went with all of that.
I love that. And I'm going to just mince some words with you, my friend Peter, and say, what if we have to move to a fifth dimension in order to observe the four dimensions?
Absolutely.
We have to get outside of it and inside of it. I love the way you said the inside, how the shepherds would look up at the stars. We're in the tetrahedron, we're in the system, and we look out through the four windows, right? Manu said this last week, 4 windows in a tetrahedron. Why are there 4 windows in a tetrahedron?
That's what it requires to enclose space.
It requires that to enclose space. If I'm inside looking out, I see windows. If I'm outside looking in, what do I see?
The structure, 3-dimensional structure.
I see a 3-dimensional structure, and I see the faces of the tetrahedron.
Yeah.
But at best, there's always one face hidden from view. When I take this tetrahedron and I turn it around, when I turn around this tetrahedron, there's always one face that you can't see. If it were solid, you wouldn't be able to see the base of it ever, right? Even if I turned it over, I could look at the base and say, oh, there's the base, but I couldn't see the other parts. And if I hold it up just right, I only see one dimension. Right? Because these back here are blocked by this face. But if I see the face as a window, if I look at it topologically instead of topographically, I see reality. If I look at this topographically, I see the face. If I look at it topologically, I see the structure. If I look at this topographically, I see how tall my tetrahedron is. If I look at this topologically, I don't give a damn how tall or small it is. I realize it is a tetrahedral structure and will always be the same. Topography and topology. And what does 224 say? Angular what?
Topology.
Topology. If we're looking at general principles in the universe, we are looking at the topology of the universe, not the topography. If I'm looking at the topography of this tetrahedron, I'm seeing the face. If I look at the topology of the tetrahedron, I see the structure, and I know there are 4 vertexes, there are 4 faces, there are 6 edges, and there are 12 angles. And now I'm not describing a 3-inch tall pyramid that's in the shape of a triangle. I'm describing a tetrahedral system.
Realize that he first went macro and then micro.
Say again, what, Manu, what?
That you first went macro.
Yes.
The tetrahedron that you see is macro. It is general.
Generalized principles.
Yes, and then he came locally to start topographically seeing the spheres, seeing the edges, seeing the faces.
We could say that generalized. I'm sorry, Manu, I don't mean to interrupt you. You're going slowly so we can hear you. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
just go ahead.
We could say that the topology, the generalized principles of a tetrahedron or any system is the illusionary infinity of a plane. It's illusionary, illusory. We don't see it.
Yeah.
However, if we collapse the topology into topography, we render systems locally and visibly finite.
Mhm.
If I do not see a part of this system, it's because I have not looked deeply at generalized principles. This is what I love about you, Anne, when you're talking about the kids come into school and this is the year of the monkey. And so let's instead of like trying to discipline the kids and make them sit in their chairs, let's see how monkeys play. Let's get monkeys involved in learning, right? Because, okay, that's how they're acting today. Let's go with it. Wonderful. Okay, comments, questions. Everybody say what I just said in their own language, please.
So,
Stop.
Steve, could we say that topography is 3D and topology is 4D?
Voila. Beautiful. I got chills, Ruffers. I'm making note. What else? Comments, questions?
No, I was just gonna say. Go
What's
ahead.
that, Joe?
Go ahead. I was just gonna say topographically, that's micro, correct?
Mhm.
And then so typologically, that's macro, and we're able to see the whole. And so, and we're able to see the edges and the connections within that, which makes sense. And now the 3D and 4D makes sense to me as well. So
And from topology, we see the inside and the outside. From topography, we're either stuck on the inside looking out, or we're stuck on the outside looking in, but we don't get the system. We're not getting the generalized principles.
right. And you
And so
can
we
also
can't-
see potential.
And when now we see potential because we're no longer bound by topography.
That's right.
We're no longer bound by micro. We're no longer bound by what is visible. Because
Well-
by opening up to topology, I see that which is not visible. Comments, questions?
It allows you to invent things too.
It allows who?
Allows me to invent something. So
How
essentially,
so?
well, if you start to see it,
If who starts to see?
if I start to see it from topographically, or if I stop looking at it topographically and I look at it topologically, I can start to see the edges and I can start to see connections that weren't otherwise there, so that I could take something apart and then recreate something new outside of it. So if I'm looking at something in a specific domain and I'm only looking at it from one angle, then I can only, I'm limited in what it can possibly be. But if I start looking at something topologically, then I can start to pull it apart and see new connections.
Ooh, I can start to pull it apart and see
And-
connections.
And see connections.
I
So
can see
that's
things
kind of,
twisting. Oh my gosh, look at there. There's precession going on there. Crap, it's not as solid as I thought that it was. If I'm looking at it topographically, I can't see my fingers because the face blocks my view. When I see this topologically, I see my fingers twisting those edges. I'm now understanding the system. I'm understanding the generalized principles, and I see that everything is constantly in motion. And everything is, go ahead.
and everything's connected.
Everything is connected, and I see exactly how it's connected. And when I see it come disconnected, it's no longer a tetrahedron.
Yeah. How do you say mathematically that everything is connected?
How do I say?
How does one say mathematically that everything is connected?
I assume you don't want us to go into string theory.
Well, actually, we're approaching string theory here.
Because
fact,
in
if
the
you-
11 dimensions they talk about in that, everything is connected instantly.
Instantly. And I think it's actually connected in 5 dimensions.
But I don't know enough about it to explain it.
Yeah. You're going to see a piece of paper in a minute here where I connect quantum reality with Bucky's illusory infinite plane.
Actually, Manu,
So, go ahead.
I was going to ask Manu if he could answer that question.
Well, wait, everybody can answer this question. How do you connect things mathematically? Let's go to 224.01, shall we? Oh, I'm so excited. I can't even stand it. This is, Kelly's been
Okay,
talking
just
about this.
imagine this thing.
What's that?
You know, look at the word structure.
Oh,
Okay, is there any independent structure that just stand on its own? Let's just say yes, independent structure.
no.
The independent structure is only when there's chaos. So a structure is always linked to another structure, isn't it?
Right. Right.
What if we use these formulas to connect, these math formulas to connect the system? What if we answer Manu's question by reading 224.01? John, do you want to read, if you would kindly read 224.01?
Definition. When expressed in terms of cyclical unity, the sum of the angles around all of the vertexes of a structural system plus 720 degrees equals the number of vertexes of the system multiplied by 360 degrees.
So how can I, to answer Manu's question, mathematically determine the structure, at least in this metaphor?
As long as you know the number of vertexes and you multiply that by 360 degrees, you'll then be able to work out how many angles and therefore the structure.
That's the 1440.
Okay, according to Bucky, what is the most expanded universe?
Let's answer that question first. According to Bucky, what's the most expanded universe? I can't answer your question, Manu. I have a picture that where I could show you what I think an expanded universe is.
It is a sphere. It is a sphere. That's why I say we always in the universe. You can't be outside of the universe.
To me,
Is that
Oh.
this is
Bucky's
Bucky's universe right here, right?
That's it.
The dot. The dot appears as micro and macro simultaneously, a minimum of 2.
Yes.
The sphere, right?
Yeah, but we've been saying it all the time. The universe is the aggregate of experiences. You remember that?
Yeah.
And what are experiences? They are structures.
Well, experiences is my scenario and your scenario.
Exactly. That is the structure.
Logically, my experience has a structure. I don't
Yes.
think of my life experience as a structure. I think of it as a story, but a story has a structure.
Yes.
We're
So
talking
you and me
ontology.
is a structure to structure. So we interact in angles, not of 180 degrees. And the aggregate of all of these experiences that we have is the universe.
Which is a big giant sphere. A
Yes,
giant
that's what
system,
you had it there.
a
Steve,
giant
show again what you
system.
were showing.
A giant system of little spheres, of aggregated spheres, which are,
That's why Bucky always come to close pack as a representation. You remember the closed pack spheres? And he had general formulas in terms of relationship of the closed pack sphere. you have any infinite spheres, number of spheres. He packed them in a way that is many cycle. Let me just show you something here.
Go ahead. I'm gonna be, as you get ready to show that, I'm gonna come back and show.
Do you see
guy.
this?
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Yes. This is made just by, Bucky does that. You build closed packed spheres. This, if you see the dot here, you see the dots? The red
Yes.
dots?
Yes.
They are centers of spheres. And it talks about frequencies. So you have 3 frequencies here, 2 frequency, 1. The tetrahedron is 1. You see the top tetrahedron there?
Yes.
Is yellow. Yellow dot is 1 frequency. Then you have 2 frequency. You remember the square when we were talking about last week? We saw the spheres at the basis, there were 4. And then you have 3 frequency here. This can be built. This is Bucky's world. This is Bucky's universe. And you can expand this almost infinitely. You can increase the frequencies.
And when you see that topographically, it looks like a tetrahedron.
Yeah, it is a tetrahedron.
Yeah, if you look at it topologically, it is spheres of energy
Yeah.
in precession.
Concave, convex. Concave, convex. You see the holes
Yes.
and the solid. Always there.
Topographically, that's a tetrahedron, and it has triangles. Topologically, it's a tetrahedron, and it's spheres.
Okay. So what Bucky says in that the tetrahedron is the basic unit of accounting of a universe. It really means it in terms of trying to represent it. You can count the number of tetrahedron here. Tetrahedron. And that is his metaphor for the universe. There are others, but that's Bucky's.
And so, comments, questions?
Finally understand comprehensivism, because that's essentially how he defines it as a comprehensive definition for the universe and why it's finite.
Yes. Another way of saying is Bucky said that if you want to count anything of this, by counting in tetrahedra, you have the most precise accounting possible. Right?
Right.
Yes. Because everything else, every superstructure that you have it is going to be the number of tetrahedra plus a fraction of tetrahedron. And since a tetrahedron is a minimum structure and you're counting thickness, the surprise will be minimal. You can start seeing general and applying locally, knowing that things will happen. Let's take an example of today. They have been pumping money in the financial system of our world. Everybody's printing. It's all expanding. But nobody knows, they never knew the channels, how that money is going to go concentrating in a few hands, or even you take it and give it to a person, then labor, that is going to result in inflation because people don't want to work anymore. So you want to do things, you don't find labor. It is expensive or material. So they forgot that all of this has to go in cyclic unities of that business, of the business of money, which is energy. And people are surprised. Countries and the world, we are surprised by the effect, the distortions that we have it. So that we call it the other day, how do you call it, Steve? The leftovers or the
leftovers.
The pollution, are you talking?
The pollution, yes.
Yes, yeah. So
the pollution increase without
Right.
us being aware of.
that we don't know what to do with yet.
Yes.
Yet.
And that is one real application over these experiments have been this experiment has been going since 2000
Right.
from Alan Greenspan up to today, and everybody has simulated Japan, China, Australia, South Africa.
Everyone though, Manu, just
Everybody's
thinks that
doing
it's
the same thing.
Manu, everyone only thinks that it's a financial experiment.
Yes.
It's not only a financial experiment. They're using the flooding of the finances, which creates inflation. It also creates a transfer of wealth from middle class to wealthy, and it creates middle class being poor. But all of that is actually again a social experiment where there's also, but coexisting with that, there's been an attack on freedoms of from every imaginable point of view.
You mean sovereignty?
And sovereignty.
Attack to sovereignty.
And that experiment is to see whether humanity is willing to be compliant or not, and not just compliant to politicians, compliant to company structures, because it's companies that are running the world, an authority. But within all of that, the what we were talking about before of circles and tetrahedrons and things is when an individual in themselves actually declares their freedom to whatever they understand the universe to be. As part of that, even in a system that's flooding to stagflation and slavery, that individual will still find a circle of peace and create freedom. So
Yeah.
it's a weird thing.
The way that person finds the freedom is they stop looking from outside the system, looking in. They
Absolutely.
get inside the system and start looking out. When I get inside of those 4 dimensions and begin to observe reality, I create autonomy. I create sovereignty. They can't do anything to me. I don't think it's a personal conspiracy to control people. It's just people looking at a system saying, oh, we're going to make the system better. And in doing so, they leave behind the autonomy, the sovereignty of each individual tetrahedron in the universe, which is you and me.
And what you've done, Steve, is basically what you say is that you create a local structure and you understand what it is.
From
That
the
is,
inside,
you cut the umbilical cord. That makes you just follow that and study to understand.
I move from
By
outside.
being aware. It's not everybody. Everybody is in that paradigm, as you say. And I like what Peter said. He said the financial experience, and then they forgot the social. Or they are aware of the social, but they think that they can control it with something else. So that duality that they ignore, either unconsciously or intentionally, really exists, and then you can't prevent it from existing. There is going to be a return, always, 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 because it's hidden to you, and you didn't anticipate it. Fine, you are going to learn, and we are going to all learn, and it might endanger even the existence of our species.
And
So
I want to come back to Manu's question. How do we describe the system mathematically? If we answer the first paragraph, which is 224.01, he gives us the math right here. The sum of the angles around the vertexes of a system plus 720 degrees equals the number of vertexes in a system multiplied by 360. And here is the proof of the system. And I invite everybody, until I really started screwing around with these guys and started cutting these paper things out, just like Manu's been holding up tonight, and really started taking a look at those things. And I start to realize that the paper and the magnets are topography expressing a metaphor of the topology. And I think the right word is ontology, the very beingness of the system. I then get a better intuitive awareness of moving inside the system and looking out. Here is the math. The math is right here. The sum of the angles. It's the first duality. I can either express the sum of the angles in arithmetic or in either by addition or by multiplication. They give me 720, which is the first duality of the cyclic unity. Then I add to that 720, the second cyclic unity, to come up with what is visible and finite. I can get to it that way, or I can get to it this way. The number of vertexes in the system multiplied by 360 degrees. This is angular topology. And the solution is statement number 2 equals statement number 3. Therefore, because they both equal each other, we now see these cyclical unities. There's the math right there. I've been updating these sheets, you guys. I've been using these sheets the last 3 weeks, and I think this is really quite good. Remember last time, and this is what Manu just talked about when he held up his cardboard thing. This will then review. There are no straight lines in the universe. Everything is spheres.
Right.
And the straight lines that we imagine are simply imaginary vectors showing the axis of precessional energy. And there are 6 edges or axes in the tetrahedron. We talked last time about electromagnetic energy and about sine and cosine and about convex and concave. We've talked the last couple of weeks about murmuration and how an individual sitting inside their double tetrahedron experiencing the octahedron of physical space and how birds do murmuration through that. Anyway, I think, you know, get this handout and cut this thing out and build it again and build it big. And now we've understood, we just went through some good stuff here. And where did we start? Here we are. So here we are in angular topology. Comments, questions, epiphanies, frustrations?
Steve, could
Yeah.
you send that to us? I think that's priceless.
Well, I actually sent it to you last week, and I've made changes on it since last week. I'll be glad to send it to everybody.
Thank you.
It's priceless because you guys helped me figure it out. I couldn't have done this on my own.
Good.
So, okay, so I have more on. We could go into. In fact, I think we could read now this 22403, and I think it'll automatically make sense. John, do you want to read?
Yes, thanks, Steve. Structural systems are local, closed, and finite. They include all geometric forms, symmetric or asymmetric, simple or complex. Structural systems can have only one inside and only one outside. 2 or more structures can be concentric and triangularly interconnected to operate as one structure.
Okay. And Manu, you can hold up your tetrahedron that you just showed us with the 4 layers of tetrahedra. There it is. That is a local, closed, finite structural system. It happens to have symmetric geometric forms, but it could be asymmetric. It could be tilted on its side.
As a matter of fact, this is the way you do it. That is it. And then I just fold and close.
And if you're building your
Oh, wow.
business, take a look
This
at
is
your
it.
system.
Right.
and then unfold it, right?
Then I fold,
Yes.
topology, folding, and I close.
This is a 2D template for a 3D tetrahedron. And if you can build it, you're in the fourth dimension.
Okay, and this is a two frequency. You see two triangle, two centers. Sine, cosine.
Okay, let's read 22404, John, if you would, and we'll just see
Sure.
that now we can understand the big picture. Go ahead.
The difference between the sum of all the angles around all the vertexes of any system and the total number of vertexes times 360 degrees as angular unity is 720 degrees, which equals 2 unities. The sum of the angles of a tetrahedron always equals 720 degrees. The tetrahedron may be identified as the 720 differential between any definite local geometrical system, such as Greek solid geometry, and finite universe.
I think that means more to me now than it's ever meant before. How about you guys? You know, I got to go back and do all the math.
Let me just be provocative here. When you take the convex and the concave, I always like to express that in terms of, just hold 1 second. You see these two?
Mhm.
This point here is 720 degrees. Is the in-betweenness between this system and that system. One convex, one concave. Concave, convex. And here, where my finger is, that's what he's been talking about in there. You can always represent that with a tetrahedron, like here. These are a bit complicated, but that's what it means.
And the tetrahedron is a topographical metaphor of the spheres, which are topological.
Yeah, and when you get to actually topology and you get to the degrees, that's when you realize that is adding the degrees of each tetrahedra, you start building spheres. Because again, when you have six times 60, that's 360, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Okay, so I want to take this conversation about topology even further. Are you guys ready to do that? Even though that all the dots, all the I's aren't dotted and all the T's aren't crossed, I'm sure I still have questions, but I'd like to really go into topology even further. You guys ready to do that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so here's some thoughts as we got together 2 weeks ago and again this last week. Susan Cortesi, who's not here, reminds us that learning stops with the first misunderstood word. So let's make sure we understand some of these words. When we talk about 2 cycles, we're talking about changing sine to cosine and cosine back to sine. Sine is 1 cycle, cosine is another cycle. Concave, convex. There's the 2 cycles together. Go ahead.
When we say sine and cosine, orthographically wise, what is the difference?
One
They
is
didn't
up and
say
one is
sine
down.
and anti-sine. They say sine and co-sine. That is coexisting, one without the other. That's why they use the word co. They're always together, operating together. But now, how do they operate? if sine is going like this on a plane, circularly, because we know that a sine is a cycle, isn't it? Right?
Right.
So if it's going like this, cosine cannot be like that, because cosine would annulate the sine. No. Cosine is there to create another dimension in order to close the structure. That is, it is rotating, it is going perpendicular to the sine. And the two are going together. Another way of seeing it is to observe something while traveling. You are traveling yourself. You are co-traveling with what you are observing. Did you get that subtlety?
Are you ready for this video, Manu?
Yes.
This will discuss sine and cosine. Ready?
The great physicist Paul Adrien Dirac devised a topological trick with strings in order to illustrate graphically an elusive property of the spin of the electron. In quantum mechanics, all particles are connected to each other and to every observer in the universe.
All particles are connected to each other and every observer in the universe. Not every observer sees them, because they look at the topography rather than the topology. Let's continue to look at the topology.
For an electron, there is a quantum state or wave function relative to a given observer. If this observer should walk around the electron, making a full turn of 360 degrees, then the wave function changes sign. This means that while a quantum mechanical system involving electrons is not brought back into exact coincidence with itself after it is rotated by 360 degrees, it is brought back into coincidence with itself after it is rotated by 720 degrees.
And thus Bucky says that if I eliminate the 720 degrees, I move from a illusory infinitive plane to a finite visible plane. In quantum physics, they talk about collapsing the wave function through observation, or they talk about the collapse of the wave function. There is the wave function. Up is sine, down is cosine, or vice versa. They always exist together. 360 degrees up, 360 degrees down. Do you want to see that again, or do you got it? Oh, heck.
Okay.
Let's see.
Let's see it again, and then we'll talk. Here we go.
Relative to a given observer. If this observer should walk around the electron, making a full turn of 360 degrees, then the wave function changes sign.
The wave function changes sign.
This means that while a quantum mechanical system involving electrons is not brought back into exact coincidence with itself after it is rotated by 360 degrees, it is brought back into coincidence with itself after it is rotated by 720 degrees.
Let's continue, because there's another
Here is
example.
Dirac's visual metaphor performed as the Philippine wine dance. Watch closely how the dancer winds the cup through 360 degrees, acquiring a twist in her arm. Then she winds the cup through another 360 degrees, and the twist in her arm has disappeared. Notice how the ribbon is moving.
Anne, you've turned off your video. Are you still here? Every time I go to show
She
this,
said she was going to come back.
yeah, every time I show the Philippine wine dance, she
around the inner sphere.
Did you see the video, Anne?
I saw it, but yeah,
Okay,
sorry about that. Yeah.
Let's do it again, because this is so profound for me. Go ahead.
Mm.
Here we go.
Here is Dirac's visual metaphor performed as the Philippine wine dance. Watch closely how the dancer winds the cup through 360 degrees, acquiring a twist in her arm. Then she winds the cup through another 360 degrees, and the twist in her arm has disappeared. Notice
So it goes back into coincidence, right? Beautiful.
how the ribbon is moving around the inner sphere. The ends of the ribbon do not move. They are fixed to the respective spheres, and
See
yet
the twist right there? See, it's all twisted up. In the
Mhm.
first 360, it's all twisted up. But now on the next C360, it clears itself up and goes back into
now the ribbon
coincidence.
returns to its original position and all the twist is gone.
There it is. The twist is gone. Right. Somewhere in there.
They are fixed to the respective spheres, and yet
Twisted up.
now the ribbon returns to its original position and all the twist.
The twist is gone, just like the Philippine wine dance. It is so cool to me how Aboriginal cultures understood these principles
Right.
and demonstrate them in their culture.
Mhm.
Well, Peter and Kat, I want to know what you guys are saying over there. What are you guys saying? Oh, there she goes. Cool. Okay, let's finish the video.
Twist is gone. This is the Dirac string trick in modern form. We have programmed the computer to twist the space between the spheres. The strings, whether one or many, are located in that space and acquire their twist from the twist of the space.
So the space is twisting, right? This is precession, right?
Right.
Everything's in constant movement.
Once we untwist the space, the strings untwist as well, and we have given you a glimpse of quantum mechanical reality.
Okay. Comments, questions?
I was going to just share an experiment here. This is a ball. We know that reality is not an illusionary infinite plane. I am an ant, right? And this is me here. How should I move to know the whole of this surface? Now I'm a scientific mouse, ant. I first go like this, right?
Mhm.
And then
Then I will know this band, probably because it will appear like flat to me, and I will know that band. How many degrees have I gone?
360.
360.
360. Now, but I know this, but I don't know that top, where the W, the two mounts are. Then I say,
The top is not visible from the 360-degree view on the
Yeah.
equator.
Mhm.
Right.
It's not visible.
then I say to myself, I just feel like there's something else. And then I decided to just change 90 degrees
Mhm.
and go around like that. And then I find myself, let's just say the 90 degree, I go like this. And again, I find myself in that
Mhm.
position without having gone horizontally. What have I done again?
Another 360 degrees.
That is a cosine, right?
Mhm.
Sine and cosine are always at
Together.
90 degrees, each other, always at 90 degrees. Meaning that if you project one into the other, it becomes a dot.
Mhm.
If I project the sine into the cosine plane, is a dot. If I project the cosine into a sine plane, is a dot. So what have I done? I've done 2 revolutions of 360 degrees to be able to have realized that this topologic thing is a sphere.
Mhm.
It is independent of the dimension of a sphere.
Did you get that? It's
So-
independent of the dimension of the
Dimension,
sphere.
yes.
It doesn't matter how big the sphere is or how
Yeah.
small the sphere is. The ant has to take the same journey.
It only needs to take 2 revolutions that are not sync, that are asynchronous. That is not asynchronous. How will I say it? That are sine and cosine. I don't know how to say it.
And now I've gone sine and cosine 1 cycle. I do it again. I've got 2 cycles.
You say you saw the Philippine dance. She first twisted, her arm was twisted. And then she did this. She didn't do that again. She will be twisted just twice. No,
Right.
she did this.
Over
Over.
and
And
then
then-
under. Under.
Yes.
Over and under.
Yes. If you look at it, it's not in the same plane.
Everybody got that?
This also
Questions?
gets,
Go ahead.
this also gets to 6 degrees of freedom, doesn't it?
Yeah.
With the
Yeah.
It
99
does, what we say, the 90 degree is a precession.
Right.
Always happen. Cosine always happen at 90 degree of sine. Sine always happen at 90 degree of a cosine. That is the duality that coexists and dance in an exquisite manner. It's like dancing vows, you know, or valsing with somebody, 2 partner valsing, or dancing, I don't know what. Latin America, rappers, how do you call it? Salsa. You see the way
Salsa,
they go.
yes.
Yes. If they deviate from that, it's no more salsa, it's something else. It's jerk. I don't know if everybody remember the jerk dance in the 70s. Jerk was just disorder. It was a hippie, following the hippie movement. They just say jerk. You just went. And that is it.
Comments, questions?
Just backtracking a little bit, Joe. What are the 6 degrees of freedom?
Aha. There's a mnemonic peg for the 6 degrees of freedom. It's Soviet P. Just think
No,
of the-
Joe, tell us. I know that Joe
Yeah.
has invented it. Please.
Well, it's the it's the diagram of murmuration, right? So that this idea that you go from 90 to 90 to 90 to 90, then you're at 360. But in order to go fully around to understand the whole, you have to go through 2 spheres like we just talked about. So you go around one way and then you go around the other way. Then from there, you have in the middle yourself, and then you're inside, and there's self, and there's otherness within that. How do I explain that? I'm trying to think if that does that explain in betweenness at all?
Sure it does.
So, Peter, say your question again. Can you repeat it?
Joe, what are the 6 degrees of freedom?
Oh, well, let's look at murmuration though,
Okay.
because this is what Joe was saying.
6 degrees of freedom as put by Bucky. Will I just enumerate them?
I'm gonna
Yeah.
show that. I'll show you a list in just a second. Let's look
Okay.
at what Joe just said.
That's what
Bird.
Bucky was saying with
Here's
like
the bird in the center of the octahedron. The octahedron shows 7 directions, 6 directions out and 1 direction in, total of 7 directions. 6 directions out are the 6 degrees of freedom. And those 6 directions out can be metaphorized as an octahedron. The being in the center looks out upward, looks out downward, looks out to the left or starboard and right to the port side, and looks ahead and back, bow and stern. 6 degrees of freedom.
and that's
Okay, let's talk
Well,
topological. It is 6 degrees of freedom right here.
Here they are right here.
Yeah, but he wasn't talking about the angular topology that Bucky insists on. Bucky insists on giving it a real field thing that you have. There got to be 6 ways of moving things independent. So the first is spin. Every system will spin on itself like that, right? Every system spins. The second is orbit. And orbit actually is, I would describe it, the way I understand is the dual of spinning. Because if I'm spinning, in order for us to work, I have something else that is rotating around me.
The Earth rotates around, the spinning Earth rotates around the spinning sun. You, the spinning you, are rotating around the spinning me, and I am rotating around the spinning you.
Okay. And then every system can have an inside and an outside. So inside out is an independent motion, right?
Right.
Inside out, like pucking. Bucky used the word pucking. When you kiss, you puck, right? So that you are pulling one surface out. Another way of seeing it is to take a ball and then you blow it out this way and then you blow it out that way. It will show you 2 ways, but it's still the same ball, the same plastic ball, balloon, I mean. You blow in and you blow in the other way. It will reverse. Then you have expansion and contraction. This sphere can expand and contract. It's still a sphere. Expand, contract it. You see, if I take this sphere and I inject energy into it, it's going to expand. I take energy out, it's going to contract, but still the same sphere.
Mhm.
So,
I
and
think
then you
Bucky-
have torque.
I think Bucky would like the word inspansion as well,
Yes.
because there's a duality to contraction
Yeah.
and expansion. Okay,
Yeah.
the next one.
Is torque. There is torque every time. If you look at that diagram of birds, right? There is torque. Even for you to be able to observe, you have to do this. So a torque is basically 2 poles moving, rotating in anti-directions. That's what a torque is.
It's torquing and reverse torquing at the same time. It's
Yes.
expanding and it's contracting at the same time. It's
Okay.
orbiting and reverse orbiting at the same time. It's spinning and reverse spinning at the same time. A torus goes in both directions simultaneously.
Okay. And then there is precession. And the best way Bucky explained precession is that of a hammer thrower or a disc thrower, or a gyroscope. You first build what you call angular momentum. That is, you hold the disc and then you rotate like this. So you are carrying kinetic energy like that, right? And then at one point you release it. When you release, the hammer is going to move in a direction that is always perpendicular to the plane of your rotation. It's not going to move on the same plane. You get what I'm trying to say? I was going in a circle like this. When I'm moving, when I release it, it goes there. So it's perpendicular to my circle. That is precession. And another way is the moon orbiting the Earth without ever collapsing into the Earth. That is precession. You get what I'm trying to say? So the degrees of freedom has to do with motion. the dimension has to do with structure.
Okay, we'll do that in just a second. I want to take a moment here, though.
You know, that is where I wanted to
Yeah.
end, is that there's always in people's mind that confusion. Degrees of freedom is motion.
Right.
Structure, dimension is structure.
Cool.
Wow.
I've invented this thing, Soviet P, to remind me of these things. So at any moment I can spout out to you the 6 degrees of freedom. SO, spin and orbit. I put a V in there, meaning vectors. Vectors are the edges, right? But I make it small because the capital letters are the 6 degrees of freedom. The small letters are just other elements relating to it. Spin, orbit, then vectors are small, then in and out, expansion, contraction, torque, and reverse torque, and then precession. And then I have P down here for equilibrium and equanimity on an A, a fulcrum of alignment. So I see this Soviet soldier standing on a teeter-totter right in the middle of the fulcrum. So he's got this alignment underneath him, and he's got equilibrium over here, and he's got equanimity over here, and he's balancing perfectly, and it's a Soviet soldier peeing. Anyway, this has been big time for me, so I'm honored to share it.
So-
Vectors simply show energy exchange. Go ahead, Joe.
Go ahead. No, I interrupted.
No, please, I'm done.
So degrees of freedom are motion and dimensions are structures, and combined they make experiences.
Well, remember that universe is not static. Structures are always bonding, moving, and doing things, always. It is a dynamic. You can have a state that is steady, but that's it.
So-
Being steady doesn't mean that it is immobile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it, and I don't mean to get off topic, but is this where chaos theory and things like that come into play?
Whatever it is, I don't know the words, but it's always moving. That is a principle.
It
There's
seems to
energy.
me,
Energy, remember, energy move. Energy always move, and energy move to the line of least resistance.
and
Always.
it seems to me that
Ah.
chaos is simply seeing motion outside of the system outside of the system. It's pollution. I don't understand it. It looks like chaos. And actually it's not chaos at all. It's part
Right.
of the system.
Yeah. Chaos
I
is
get-
the dual of order. And structure is order, is relations.
Okay, I want to reinforce the spinning. I'm going to show you another thing here. And it will talk about moving around on 360 degrees. Here we go.
The first three dimensions can be described with these words: length, width, and depth. What word?
Topography, right there, right? Most people see their lives as a bunch of dimensional things objects coming at them. Topography.
Can we assign to the fourth dimension? One answer would be duration. If we think of ourselves as we were 1 minute ago, and then imagine ourselves as we are at this moment, the line we could draw from the 1 minute ago version to the right now version would be a line in the fourth dimension. If you were to see your body in the fourth dimension, you'd be like a long undulating snake, with your embryonic self at one end and your deceased self at the other.
If I could move to the fifth dimension and see myself in the fourth dimension, I would see myself as an infant, an adult, and a dead person simultaneously. My entire scenario would be visible to me. I would see my whole system. But I'd have to be in a fifth dimension to observe the 4 dimensions of the 3-dimensional reality. I know that blew you away, but this is what I dream about.
You have to eliminate
Because we live
700.
from moment to
Say again?
You have to eliminate 720 degrees in order to
Oh.
have an experience.
Here we go.
But because we live from moment to moment in the third dimension, we're like our second dimensional flatlanders. Just like that flatlander who could only see two-dimensional cross-sections of objects from the dimension above, we, as three-dimensional creatures, can only see three-dimensional cross-sections of our fourth-dimensional self.
The three-dimensional cross-sections of the four-dimensional self are the topographic impressions of a topological life. I can move to a new dimension and I become a prophet. I can see the future. I'm a businessman and develop a businesswoman and develop a business because I perceive I'm not trapped in a three-dimensional reality.
One of the most intriguing aspects of there being one dimension stacked on another is that down here in the dimensions below, we can be unaware of our motion in the dimensions above. Here's a simple example.
We can be unaware of our motions in the dimensions above. Precession.
If we make a Mobius strip, take a long strip of paper, add one twist to it and tape the ends together, and draw a line down the length of it, our line will eventually be on both sides of the paper before it meets back with itself. It appears, somewhat amazingly, that the strip has only one side, so it must be a representation of a two-dimensional object. And this means that a two-dimensional flatlander, traveling down the line we just drew, would end up back where they started without ever feeling like they had left the second dimension. In reality, they would be looping and twisting in the third dimension, even though to them it felt like they were traveling in a straight line. The fourth dimension.
So take Manu's story of the ant going around the ball. If that ball were a Mobius ball, the ant would keep walking, would not realize they were going around the equator and then going over the top, the poles. They'd just be walking through and they wouldn't notice the twisting and turning. They think they were stuck in a two-dimensional reality when exactly they were experiencing a three-dimensional reality. Just like you and I can get stuck experiencing a three-dimensional reality when actually we're existing in a four-dimensional reality.
Mm.
And if I
You do, in fact, because Steve, when you were in your heydays of music, you were still being called Steve.
Say again, I was what?
In your heydays of music,
Yeah.
of playing guitar with your band and all this thing,
Yeah.
and singing beautifully as you sing, you were still being referred to as Steve Thomas, right, isn't it?
Right.
Today, I call you Steve Thomas.
Yes.
But do I have that experience of you playing? Only because we are aware that it is something that we could record in our brain memory, that you can share that with us today, isn't it?
Right. Because
But
we
Steve-
store the record in our brain. We store the
Yes.
record in our brain.
Steve is Steve. And your whole life, I don't know who, maybe it's only Joe here who hasn't experienced the old movies. You know the way they were, Steve, Joe? There was a reel.
Yes,
were live.
I have not seen that.
Have you seen that?
Oh,
And there was
only-
what you
I've
call
seen it in movies.
an operator. And the sanctity or where the operator was. On top, you go to a movie and there is a small room on top where the operator is. And he had all the girls.
The projection room.
Yes. And he had all the girls.
It sounds like you had a job in a movie theater, Manu.
No, I was just a
You know how
simple
that
guy
works.
working. But the guy
Because
was so successful.
when I was in radio, one of my clients was a movie theater. And I'll tell you, the guy who managed that movie theater, who was in the projection room, had women in that projection room all the time. It's so funny you say that, Manu. Okay, let's continue with this, I think. Or comments or questions before we move on? Because this is like heavy duty.
How do I get a job in a projection room?
Yeah, no
No,
kidding.
no, just
First question. That's the first best question I've heard all night long. Very, very topographical. Any other comments, questions? Okay, let's finish this video. And notice he's going to talk about twisting and turning here.
Time feels like a straight line to us, moving from the past to the future. But that straight line in the fourth dimension is, like the Mobius strip, actually twisting and turning in the dimension above. So the long undulating snake that is us will feel like it is moving in a straight line in the fourth dimension, but there will actually be in the fifth dimension a multitude of paths that we could branch to at any given moment. Those branches will be influenced by our own choice, chance, and the actions of others. Quantum physics tells
Okay, our own choice, chance, and the decisions of others. This guy's acknowledging otherness, which is exactly what Bucky does, right? There's me and there's otherness. There's you and there's otherness. Choice, chance, and the decision of others. Bucky would acknowledge choice. What would Bucky say about chance? Bucky would say there is no, if I may speak for him, there is no serendipity. There is no chance. There is only synchronicity. It's the system following its normal trajectory, its normal precession. And all I have to do is move into the fifth dimension to observe the four other dimensions. And how do I do that? I move inside the system and look from inside, and I get outside and look both directions. Now here we go with the, go ahead.
I say your mind. You have to develop your mind, definitely.
Absolutely. Comments, questions? Okay, I'm going to back this up just a smidgen, and we're going to hear something. Tell me when you hear something that sounds like eliminate 720 degrees, or when nature does a tuck in these cycles. Here we go.
of others. Quantum physics tells us that the subatomic particles that make up our world are collapsed from waves of probabilities simply by the act of observation. In the picture we are drawing for ourselves here, with probabilities simply.
Anybody see a sine cosine function right there?
Mhm.
And the trouble is, it's only showing 360 degrees, isn't it?
Mhm.
It should be showing 720 degrees, right?
Side by side, it would be going.
There we go.
Yeah, there it is.
If I move to this picture of reality instead of that picture of reality, I'm moving from a 2D representation to a 3D representation. And when I move further to see, because a 3D would just be this from this cycle here and this cycle here.
Yes.
When I see two complete cycles, I now move into the fifth dimension,
Right.
because I'm not just trapped in 720 degrees. It was great for me to come out of 360 and go to 720, but when I go from 720 to 1440, voila, and that's the minimum. That's not the whole thing.
So
Yeah.
Bucky said life start with awareness. So lifestyle start with awareness. It means that I'm working on the horizontal, the sine, but I'm aware that the cosine exists. Then I'm living.
And how wonderful it is to have otherness, because if I didn't have otherness, I would have no experience of myself.
Yes.
There'd be
Right,
no
right.
conversation going on.
Yes.
I'd be
No, I
sitting
say
down.
awareness of otherness. That's what he's saying. I didn't put in completely.
Well,
So life start with awareness of otherness.
if I were this poor bird, where's the bird? It's so, oh yeah. If I were this poor bird in the center of a universe and I did not have otherness, I would have no experience of myself. None.
Yes.
I'd be floating in a freaking void. And I'd be spinning and orbiting, and I'd have no bearing of that. But I bring in
Right.
otherness and I start having a conversation. I share my scenario, you share your scenario, and I begin to understand the systems. Comments, questions? Okay, let's finish this this video. Oh, and I want to show you some really cool stuff on where to go. Where's my guy? Well, I think I must have taken it off here. Oh, there he is right there. Okay, ready? I'm going to back him up a little bit because when this guy talks about the collapse of the wave function, we're going to translate this into Bucky when we get done. Here we go.
This tells us that the subatomic particles that make up our world are collapsed from waves of probabilities simply by the act of observation. In the picture we are drawing for ourselves here, we can now start to see how each of us are collapsing the indeterminate wave of probable futures contained in the fifth dimension into the fourth dimensional line that we are experiencing as time.
Okay. I think that Bucky...
He talk about the collapse from weight of probabilities. Do you hear that?
Yes. Did you guys hear that?
Mhm.
The collapse
Collapsing
wave
from,
of probabilities.
yes.
Who collapses the wave of probabilities? Who does that?
I heard weight of probabilities. Weight.
Oh, it said wave. It says wave of probabilities, but weight is good because weight is gravity, and that's another wave.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that I wanted to bring that you are apprehending, right? You are apprehending otherness. And your experiences make it more and more probable. You know, circumstances, it define more and more circumstances or the local of it until the aha is the collapse under the weight of evidence. If I take it to the courtroom and John, so, you know, if you take it,
Oops, sorry. Lucky
I was
you have
saying
a
that, you know,
partner
we
with
just
you,
watched
John.
a movie.
Your
That's
partner's
it.
great, John.
Yes, I heard collapse of probabilities.
That's what I did.
And I
He
think myself,
did. He collapsed in probability.
yes. So in the courtroom, we're looking for what we call truth there, right? We want to discover truth. And there are arguments, there are circumstances, there are innuendos, all of those things are brought together until hopefully there is a conviction or whatever that is aha. It's really beyond it. You say beyond what? Beyond the
Reasonable
Beyond a
doubt.
doubt. Beyond a reasonable
beyond
doubt.
reasonable doubt. That is the collapse
Mhm.
of everything else.
Probabilities. The collapse
Yes,
of
into
probability.
one structure. That is, the structure is there without doubt. I'm just trying to take what we're looking for when we're discussing and putting it in the context of something that we live every day.
And let's
That
take
is-
a look. I want to continue with the court thing because, John, if I kill somebody, the court will look at my intention to determine the
correct.
degree of my fault. So there's a
Well, there may be no
topological-
fault if there's no intention. If you're driving a car and you
Yeah.
keep your car reasonably maintained and there's a completely unpredictable brake failure, as a result of which you slam into somebody and kill them, there is no intention and you cannot be convicted of murder
Exactly.
because it was something that happened without any contribution on your part. If you fail to maintain your car, if you're driving a vehicle that's dangerous, then you've got some culpability. But if you've contributed in no way consciously or negligently to it, then you may kill somebody, but it may not involve any guilt.
And so I can look at the evidence, which is topographical, but then I look at the intention, which is
That's right.
topological.
Right.
Woo,
Right.
woo. Okay, I have some other stuff here that I think we're finishing this off, but I really want to share it because this is something that I built with my friends on our Wednesday meeting here. And I think this will really help to understand what goes on. Before I give you those definitions, let's watch a couple of videos right here. And this is only going to take 2 minutes. So here we go.
Hey, Segerman, this is Topology Joke. This is a joint work with Keen and Crane. So there's an old joke in topology. So a topologist is somebody who can't tell the difference between a coffee mug and a donut. So, so topology is the study of...
Okay, there's an old joke that a topologist cannot tell the difference between a coffee mug and a donut. Watch this.
geometrical objects, when you don't care about lengths and you don't care about angles, all you care about is the sort of global shape properties. And so everything's made out of very stretchy rubber.
We don't care about dimensions, mass. We only care about intrinsic properties. Here we go.
And in particular, that means that if you take a coffee mug, you can sort of unindent the place where the coffee goes, and you can kind of squish out the handle a little bit, and eventually you can deform it into this perfectly symmetrical round donut shape.
A coffee mug and a donut are topologically the same critter.
Mhm.
Here we go. This is topological. It's called deformation, makes it homomorphic. Here we go. A cup is homomorphic with a donut. Here we go. Now watch it slowly. This thing's only going to last a minute and a half long. It's starting to shift. It's going. In a minute here, you're going to see it. The bottom is coming up in this cup, and you're going to see it right there. The mass of the cup and the dimensions of the cup is not serious, because all we're doing is expanding the bottom of the cup. We have not changed the topology yet. We've changed the dimensions. We've changed it topographically, but not topologically. Now watch, it's beginning to morph. It is homeomorphic. A cup is homeomorphic with a donut. There we go. That is a transition in topology. Let me see. I don't know. I don't remember how much is left on this thing. We're going at normal speed there. Let's speed it up twice as fast now. Okay, it looks like that's it. That's what it's going to do. You got it, you guys? Topologically, a cup and a donut are the same thing. Why? Because of that freaking hole. Oh, here we go. It's going to expand back into a cup again.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then watch, it starts to look, the bottom, it starts to change. The dimensions change, but the basic shapeness of it, the characteristic of it. do not
Introducing
change.
all cam
Okay, so here we go. This is it.
My Eye,
John, do
the
you
most
wanna,
advanced wearable AI for
you
vision
wanna read?
impairment.
Here we go. John, do you care to read?
Definition, topology versus topography. The math of topography defines the length, width, height, and/or depth of an object. In the math of topography, mass, size, and/or dimensions of an object are all that matters. The math answers the question, how big is this donut? When topographical measurements are used, the size and mass of a donut shape is defined, and a microscopic donut is different from a donut the size of the Earth.
Got it? Continue.
The math of topology defines the characteristics of the shape of the object. In the math of topology, mass, size, and/or dimensions of an object are irrelevant. This math answers the question, what makes a donut a donut? When topological measurements are used, the characteristics of a donut is defined, and a microscopic donut is exactly the same as a donut the size of the Earth.
There you go. And this link right here shows the topology joke video that I showed you. And this video here shows the continuous deformation through homeomorphism. Comments, questions?
Don't bite into the mug.
What's that?
I said you can bite into the donut, but don't bite into the mug.
Exactly right. Any other comments? What?
I was just going to say that I was going to relate that to to what we talk about. Remember the relevancy map?
What's that?
Yes, yes, I
The
do.
relevancy map.
Yeah. The
The
circles
in-betweenness between the macro,
and the micro.
yes,
Like,
irrelevant and relevant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite graphics.
And so you guys, when coming back to our reading tonight, when Bucky starts describing the tetrahedron, he is talking about a topological definition of tetrahedron. It doesn't matter how big the tetrahedron is, the characteristics are always the same, whether it's this size or the size of the Earth.
Yes.
But when I understand tetrahedron topologically, I understand the system, and I can build it big or small, and it will always be a stable structure.
And you understand why expanded tetrahedron can become a sphere, right?
You guys see how it can become a sphere?
Deformation of the tetrahedron can give you a sphere. The tetrahedron is just, as Bucky defined it, a minimum system. Minimum, yes.
You got the tetrahedral structure in terms of edges and origin points, and you have the tetrahedral structure as spheres. Topologically, Bucky's definition describes either of these things.
Yes. And if you pack more and more, you have actually a sphere. If you look at the close pack, if you look at this thing, obviously the one on the other side, and you pack it, you're gonna have a sphere. Because the difference between the center of ball are going to become smaller and smaller in comparison to the radius of a structure that you get. Yeah.
Shoot, I can't control the size of this all that well, but there we go. We can go from dots to tetrahedrons, and topologically, the math is all the same. And we describe that math in these two paragraphs we've been reading.
In terms of angle, that's all matter.
In terms of
angle doesn't depend on the radius, on the length of the two sides. The angle does not depend on that. When you say 60 degrees, whether I represent it with two little things like that or my whole arm is still 60 degrees. Do we get that? An angle is independent of the measurement of the sides that are brought together to intersect and define it.
A triangle can be 30,000 miles long, and the angle will always be the same as if it were 3 millimeters long.
Yes, it will always be 180 degrees. That's a definition of a triangle. A definition of a circle is 360 degrees.
Now, you guys, it's about time for us to go. And one of the things I did was I took the sheet that we've been working on the last little while, this little sheet, and I took that sheet. This is called version 2, I think. And I built a version 3 where I started taking synonyms and coloring them the same. So elimination of 720 degrees of angle, 2 complete 360-degree angular tucks, 2 cyclical units, an electron, there is a quantum state of wave function. An electron is brought back to coincidence after it has rotated 720 degrees. The observer collapses. The elimination of 720 that undertakes the wave function collapses. Those are all synonyms. And I went through and colored everything orange, illusionary infinity of a plane. The wave function changes sign. The wave function, illusionary infinity of a plane. I put those together, and then I took and put, it renders systems locally visible, visually finite system, relative to a given observer, to create reality, systems locally and visibly finite, to create reality. And so I took all of these words in these different metaphors and tried to identify synonyms to help my brain comprehend everything I was apprehending.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
so,
contend that if you don't have this solid, you will always have a problem with Bucky, because it will get too complicated, because you will be lost in the detail. Whereas if you get some of the definition clearly, there's a good chance that in a more complex one, you could make sense after a few readings.
So this, although these are the same handouts as before, they've been modified and changed and made more accurate. And I'm going to send all three of these two being exactly the same. One is just has markers on it. I'm going to send all these out with the recording this week. Okay. So Peter, how are you feeling and what's your takeaway?
Well, I think I'm excited that Joseph wants a new career as a film projectionist. I mean, you know,
Forget
the
the
thing the
dogs.
guy
Johnny.
does to get a date.
Forget the dogs. It's all about film projecting. Go ahead.
I got a little bit lost in some of it today, but I came back to that. I guess for me, it's how you look at things determines what you actually see. So that's where I was kind of focused on. And my brain being my brain, I looked at it and went, well, how do we apply that to the world? How do we apply it to business? And, you know, I'm very clear that our context creates our reality. Some people see a problem, some people see an opportunity, and depends on the context as to what we create. So how I actually got that from sines and cosines and some of the other complicated stuff, I'm not actually quite sure, but I did. And the other thing that I saw clearly today was simultaneously, it's a good thing to have a micro and a macro view of the world. Kat, what did you take away today?
That is crucial to miss calls.
Not to miss calls.
Not to miss calls. Well, to miss them is crucial because you minor, it would actually take a bit more effort to actually catch up. It's not impossible. It's just that it just takes a little bit more effort, more attention. And yet through the quantum, it actually, you do catch up anyway. But it's always kind of good to see, you know, the understanding of kind of how we, in a way, come from the big to the small, and then we go back to the big as a way of applying what we are learning. So in the same way, it actually applies to how the current status of the world, the current collective perspective of the world. So, and I don't know, I found it cool and confusing at the same time. So that's how I feel, and that's my takeaway. John, how do you feel, and what do you take away of that loving push from Di?
Thank you, Kat. No, it was a roller coaster ride. Some parts of the ride were very familiar. I mean, I've been very fond of, I fell in love with the tetrahedron over 30 years ago. So very comfortable with tetrahedrons around me. And the coffee mug and the donut morphing was interesting, and I'll have that in my mind for a long time. Some bits I struggled with, some bits were familiar. Overall, the mind's trying to make sense of it all. So an interesting journey, an interesting experience. Overall, I'm glad I was able to share it with you all. So, Joe, will you take out of today?
Well, John, you helped me understand collapsing probabilities. So that I got down now. And then one of the, I mean, the key takeaway for me is, just again, looking at things topologically versus topographically. And then how, once we see things topologically, we can start to see connections that we haven't seen before and actually take something apart and recreate something within that system. If that makes sense. There's another, I mean, Manu's example of the ant going around the earth was really eye-opening for me. Specifically that the ant was then all of a sudden curious, and that was going to go 90 degrees one way, 90 degrees the other way, 90 degrees. And then I was able to put together the 6 degrees of freedom from there and understand that a little bit more, and how that relates to murmuration, essentially. Then I'm trying to think of the other is rethinking about how pollution fits into this as well. But I don't know if I can explain that yet, looking at my notes the way I have them structured right now. Those are my major takeaways. I have more. But I also wanted to, just I'm looking forward to seeing Kelly get back here as well. I wanted to add that in. So I think it'll be good to hear his voice again. Let's see. Anne, what are you taking away? How do you feel and what are you taking away today? Oh, and I feel very lucky as always, to be part of the group.
Thank you, Joe. I really, first, thank you so much, everyone, because for taking the time to dig deep, into the things that we've been talking about. And I think for the first time, what we discussed over the past few months have all come together in literally, you can visualize it in one picture. It's they're all interrelated. Now, you may not know it. I'm really excited inside, bouncing up and down, because the first thing I'm going to do after this is call my engineering sister and tell her for the first time in my life, I understood sine and cosine and how it links into everything else. Yes. Okay. Oh, and yes, I also understood precession. Finally, thank you so much there. So much appreciated. And it's really great to have Catalina and Peter back, because the two of you generally will throw that other dimension into the loop. And everything gets jumbled back up, and yeah, so it's been an amazing morning for me. Thank you very, very much. Yeah. So and then now over to Rafis. How do you feel, and what is your takeaway today?
Oh, Raffers is evidently not here. We don't have Raffers. If you're here, turn on your sound. I didn't see him make a comment. So Manu's next.
Okay. Yeah, Manu, over to you then, Manu.
Yeah, I'm really first grateful and appreciative of all the contributions. I know that the more we are, the more we look at different angles, the more we will see of a dimension. I also appreciate the fact that we're always in between. We're always in between. Imagine that the moon crashes into the earth. We'll be finished. There won't be any conscience of us in this form of anything. So we're in between. And the third thing that I get, which is also true, a truth, is that change always happens at the border. I repeat, change always happens at the border. So it's important for me to understand the topology, the topography, and act on those in order to anticipate whatever possibility that could happen and design consequently or time consequently of my actions. So that's what I really take away, is that knowing principles, you can take them and put them into design to improve the betterment and better all those that are concerned. And then if you understand it well, you can do it in a way that really is impactful, in a way that is positive, like Anne is doing with education. So that's what I take away. Otherwise, I wish Kelly really more strength, more health to be able to be here with us physically when we meet next. Is it John?
John's done.
Okay, so who is left? Is just Steve?
Steve.
Because Steve, how do you feel? What do you take away?
I wish Raffers was here. He made some real good contributions tonight for me that were really good. You guys, I've just been thrilled and honored, and I can't even tell you how wonderful this has been, and it continues to be for me. I'm writing a book called Extreme Mindfulness, and one of the aspects of this book is dimensionality. And to suddenly be able to understand, and I only through really focusing on this last 3 weeks to understand the difference between topology and topography has been just mind-blowing for me. I also have been looking at different dimensions and how they fold, how they double. There's always two, and then they fold. And then there's now two that folded, and it doubles. Now there's four, and it folds. And then there becomes eight, and it folds. And I'm looking at multiple dimensionality and this idea of being able to observe more than just what's going on for me. Observe reality more than on its face, to be able to look at the face of reality and then look back at the energy that appears to formulate and that as a particular face. And of course, the only reason why it's doing that is because of my brain and what my brain has stored in the past. What I've got to do is step past what my brain stores and go to some place where I can imagine or dream a possibility not bound by my past experience. And that has been the big challenge of these calls. I miss the fact that Kelly's not here. I love the fact that he likes to focus on development of business. And I actually had some real estate thing on factoring real estate that maybe I'll bring up one of these days to show how dividing is begin with a whole that's a sum of parts and divide those parts up to come up with different aspects, different systems, and each one creates a different value. And we're going to be talking more about that as we go. So I'm just really thrilled to be here, honored. If it weren't for you guys, and I'll tell you, Anne, what you've shared, Joe, Peter, and Kat, and John, and Manu, and Susan, who is not here in this call. Laurent has been here on occasion. Raffers, the way everybody puts in, I'm really getting a pretty clear picture to prove to myself I don't really understand this stuff. I can describe certain parts. I can describe certain parts, but so I'm honored. Thank you very much, and I look forward to our next week. Peace to all of us.
Bye-bye.
You betcha. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Steve.
You betcha.
Thanks, Manu.
Thank you, Manu, for your communications during the week, my friend. I'm slowly getting parts of it. Slow. We'll see.
I'm like your music, Steve. I don't know. I listened to that stuff yesterday. I called my wife, come and listen, come and see Steve here.
Most of that stuff was recorded back in 2017. So it's at least 3 years old. Some of it may be a little bit older, but
you should, I don't know how, it's such, the words.
Yeah.
that you use, plus the music is beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
I really like it.
Oh, beautiful. That's why when you come up with James Brown, I Feel Good, that's one of the songs I've been doing for 30 years. I've been doing James Brown, I Feel Good.
But Steve, you have a beautiful voice. You have a beautiful voice. Really.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, my friend. See you Wednesday.
Yes.
Bye-bye.